All right, so I'm a little late to the party this one, but let's talk some romance. Let's talk about Materialists, a new movie by Celine Song, starring Dakota Johnson, Chris Evans, Pedro Pascal, and Zoe Winters. This is Celine Song's sophomore feature following up the incredible Past Lives, which for me was a top 3 film of its respected year, and a movie that I wish got more awards attention than even it got, but a screenplay nomination, a Best Picture nomination, just an incredible film, and I was utterly excited to watch her return to the big screen, and that's what we have here in Materialists. So as you know, if you've seen the film, Dakota Johnson plays a matchmaker in New York City trying to find a person the most appropriate partner based on all these boxes that she could check, right? All these really tangible things, their wealth, their height, their physical appearance, their status, and in the middle of all of this, she reconnects with her former partner, played by Chris Evans, who is someone of very low income, very low status. And she also forms a relationship with Pedro Pascal, who plays a character who is a quote-unquote unicorn, or as described as this unicorn in the film, which is essentially the perfect man, a very attractive older man who's extremely rich and has all the resources in the world to give someone the quote-unquote perfect life on paper. I'll be honest, I have to admit, even though this movie is directed by Celine Song, the trailers did not sell me. I was not into either of them. I think there were 2 trailers, and when the movie came out, all the discourse I was seeing around it, love, hate, and everywhere in between, I was getting a really bad vibe about this movie. The trailers made it feel like this rom-com that was really going for nostalgia and an early 2000s sort of thing. And while a lot of those movies are great and iconic for what they are, I was worried Celine Song was falling into this sort of nostalgia bait that so many studios and creatives are doing at this moment in time. And I sat down in the theater a couple days ago and I was very nervous. I was like, I don't know if I'm going to like this. I don't know how this thing is going to feel. I cannot seem to, find a review that even perfectly articulates what this movie is about. And then I sat down, and after the A24 logo popped on the screen, I saw something. And I saw something that alleviated all my fears, and I was reminded that I'm going to be okay. After a couple studio logos in big white letters on a black background, it says a film by Celine Song. And that's exactly what I got for the next hour and 55 minutes, and I found that to be absolutely wonderful. And what I got was a film that solidifies Celine Song as a signature voice in cinema right now, and truly a unique storyteller. Celine Song is 2 for 2, in my opinion. She is. This movie does not reach the heights of Past Lives, in my opinion, but I think it is an incredibly solid follow-up that does so much right. And while the movie does have flaws, which we will get into, Celine Song's directorial talent, her style, her ability to understand character and understand human emotion is so incredibly strong that I think the flaws don't hold this movie back at all. It's like she's operating on such a high level to me that the flaws are there, they're present, and they impact my experience very minimally just due to how good I think Celine Song is. In 2 movies, she has handled 6 characters now who I firmly believe in the hands of other creators would have easily fallen into a very simple trope, a character being overtly a villain or unlikable, someone very clearly being a hero, someone very clearly being a likable character that you want to root for. I think it would be very easy to pass judgment on these characters, but that is not what Celine Song does. She handles these characters with nuance and without judgment. She does not do the judging. She just presents these characters for you. She lets them exist in front of you, fully human, fully vulnerable, fully emotional, mature, and then you as the audience are the ones who get to judge. She is putting your perception of the characters in your own hands. She is not trying to guide you any which way, and I think that's brilliant because Past Lives and this movie Materialists really exceed by just letting these people exist in a space and breathe. A story is told to you, and then you reflect on it after. And that, to me, is where the rewarding experience comes in. It's the way she handles those characters that fuel this story, a dissection of modern dating in a brutally honest and really raw way. A movie that is looking to explore the concept of material possession, right? This idea of checking boxes. What really is love? Love is love something on paper? Is love something that you could quantify, put a number on, put a package to, right? And be able to just do math. The whole film is about dating being a mathematical equation, these problems that make sense, and they're very rational, analytical, and as long as you balance the numbers, that's how you find a perfect match. And that's what we really see with her matchmaking job and her relationship with Pedro Pascal. But then you have Chris Evans' character who comes in the fold, and love is put through a different lens. Love is put through a non-tangible lens. It is basically comes down to, when you have love, you know it and you feel it, and you could only understand that when you have it. It's not something you could force. It's not something that you could check boxes with. And sometimes it's as simple as, I just love you, and loving you is easy because that's what it is. While this movie is that dissection of modern dating and does explore that, especially in this backdrop of New York City, so it's a very heightened, like high luxury, right? So that may not be relatable to everyone, and that may be a hard barrier of entry for some people, and I could totally see that. But while it's doing that, and while that appears, once again, in my opinion, to be the overarching theme, I think the larger overarching thing is as simple as, is love something you can touch, or is it just something that you experience? And the way you experience love is just by knowing. At the end of the day, we all have loved ones. I'm very lucky to have a partner who I love very, very deeply, and hopefully can spend the rest of my life with, and I just know that. I could try to explain it to you, I could try to prove it to you, but at the end of the day, in my heart, in my brain, in my soul, I just know it, I just feel it. And I think that, to me, struck so hard, and why Dakota Johnson's relationship and performance with Chris Evans worked so strong for me, because it felt like something I could understand sitting in that audience, whereas her relationship with Pedro Pascal, I could not see. And when she's playing the matchmaker, I could not see any of that stuff, because for my typical spot in life right now, quantifying love is not something I can do or ever done in terms of my possessions, my status, my wealth, etc. I've always looked at, do I love this person? Can I feel love for this person? And what am I motivated to do because of that? And through all that, Celine Song is just a hell of a filmmaker. She is not worried about being patient. She lets scenes breathe. She's not worried to use long takes, and things she does with the camera is absolutely incredible. Starting out very wide, showing two characters in a very large space with other stimuli going on, and then slowly zooming in, raising the volume of their conversation, drowning out the sound and chaos of what's happening around them. There's also a scene where Dakota Johnson is walking down a hallway with a collection of bridesmaids getting ready to talk to a bride, and the way they're walking down the hall and the sound design, it's like soldiers marching, following their commander. Her framing of scenes, and more importantly, blocking of characters, is outstanding too. The way she uses space, the way she has characters move, the way in some scenes she lets the characters move camera still, and then vice versa, what she does by helping the camera have some energy to really enhance the scene around characters. I mean, she is just an absolute wizard. There's also, in my opinion, an incredible beginning and end of this movie that she bookends really well. If you watch The Studio on Apple TV, he loves a bookend. Well, I love a good bookend too. I also think the screenplay is really good too. Celine Song herself has experience as a matchmaker. She writes what she knows, and I think she's really damn good at it too. I think the dialogue between characters is so incredibly strong. There are some incredibly moving monologues as well. And while I'll say two things, that the writing does come across in the dialogue a bit too clean and a bit too written, if you will, as in it feels like the characters are saying a lot more than they need to. They're being explicitly detailed. They're making sure they're saying every single thing that's on their mind. It kind of adds to what I said earlier, that all the characters in her films are very emotionally mature, where they have no problem saying exactly how they feel. They're very confident and self-assured in their feelings too, and at some points in the film, it could probably come off as unnatural. I could see that. But at the same time, I think what's being said and what's on the page is so good then I don't really give a shit. I was kind of into everything that they were saying because it was all very compelling to me. So while some might knock the dialogue as being like too written, or maybe some might knock the characters as being they're saying way too much, why aren't they showing any restraint? Why do they feel like these, not robots, but why do they feel like they're so programmed to just say every single thing that's on their mind perfectly articulated? I get that, but for me, it really worked. Talk about the performances. I thought Dakota Johnson is great in here. Dakota Johnson might be, and I mean this as a compliment, not an insult, because I think there's several films from her in the last 5 years or so that I think are absolutely incredible, where she does do some different things, but Dakota Johnson, in my opinion, is one of the best examples of an actor being really good at a thing. And when they do this one thing, and they might do this thing a few times with some variations, but when they do this thing, they absolutely soar. I'm thinking of Yes, Okay. I think that's the name of the movie. I'm thinking of Cha Cha Real Smooth. I'm thinking of this movie. I'm thinking of the trailer I see for Splitsville, where she's going to do this thing, the sort of thing that where she operates with another human being in this relationship form in this slightly complicated way. And I just think she's awesome. And there's a lot she does as this movie goes on, that there's a very bold pivot that we'll get to at some point in the movie, and I think she really runs with it and gives a really great performance. Pedro Pascal, really solid too. Surprised at how much he was doing. I really like Pedro Pascal. I know he seems like he's in every single movie right now, because he kind of is. He has like 2 more coming out this year, and he's already been in 2 or whatever. But I really like what they did with his character. I think there could have been a little bit more depth with him and a little bit more places we could go, but I really dug him, and I really found him likable, and I also understood him, and in a way was rooting for him too, which was difficult because I was also rooting for Dakota, and I was also rooting for Chris Evans, who, let me talk about Chris Evans now, one of the best things I've seen him do. What an awesome role for him to kind of come full circle with like the romance stuff. I think the character is very relatable, very likable, and why I think he could have used some more depth too, and a little bit more to him instead of just kind of hyper focusing on his situation. I thought he was great, and he has multiple scenes in this movie that did bring me to tears, especially his relationship with Dakota Johnson. It was convincing. I loved it, and I just thought these 3 characters were so well done, and once again, no judgment to them, no judgment placed on them. She just lets them exist as these human beings, and I ate it up. And yet, in terms of pure talent in the performance, Zoe Winters, my God, I think is the best performance in the film. In the little doses that we see her, she's excellent on Succession in a very, very small sample size. What she has here in this movie, too, is limited, but absolutely outstanding. And she has a storyline in this movie that ends up being a very bold swing that I know there are people who do not like it, and we'll get into it. I know there are people who do not like it and do not think it was handled well. More on that later, but I think regardless of what you think about that, the performance is so incredibly strong and so incredibly captivating that she owns it and she sells it, and I buy it. And shout out to Zoe Winters. I hope this opens up many, many more doors for her, and I cannot wait to see her in something else very soon. I do think the movie wraps up a little too clean, but I'll say this, I think there's a lot of subtext around the ending that makes it work for me. And as a very emotional viewer, and as someone who right up until the couple ending scenes was in tears and really hoping for certain things to happen and starting to feel very fulfilled, I like that the ending does feel very fulfilling, even though it might feel easy, because that's what I like in movies. That's what I like in my story sometimes. Sometimes I want things to resolve a certain way that I'm hoping for and expecting in the movie I'm watching. Sometimes there's no problem in giving people watching exactly what they want. And I'll talk more about the big storyline in more detail that some people are having a problem with. I'll say for me, there's a big swing and a big sort of pivot that happens in the movie. And I'll say this, there's something that Celine Song does that it does come across like just a plot device for Dakota Johnson, and it kind of doesn't go as deep as maybe I think it could have. I'm going to put an asterisk by that, could have, and I think it's part of that very clean, very easy ending. But at the same time, I think if Celine Song would have explored that concept deeper and went harder with it, the movie changes, and now all of a sudden the story completely changes, and we're watching a much different film that I think would have felt a lot messier than some people are accusing this one of being. All in all, I think Celine Song is 2 for 2. Performance is great. Screenplay really, really good. Direction, lights out. The look and feel of this thing is awesome. I'm giving Materialists a really strong 8.5 out of 10. I think it is a flawed movie, but it is elevated immensely by Celine Song. I recommend it. And if you've already seen it, let's talk about the discourse about it. It's time to get into that. So let's do that right now. I think this is a divisive movie for a few reasons. One, I do think it is not as good as Past Lives. I think that was I think people had high expectations and were let down. I also think it had a bit of a marketing problem. Some of these movies struggle with this, where it's like they know what the movie is and they know it probably won't be accessible to the mainstream, so they cut the trailer to look like it's something different. The trailers for this movie are totally different. I know the second one's a little bit more drama heavy, but this is a straight up rom-dram. I mean, there is comedy in this movie, and it's funny, but it plays like something much more serious than a rom-com does. It also doesn't have your typical rom-com tropes of like a conflict happening and then a character going off and being upset and there being a lot of fighting and this big sort of crescendo comeback moment at the end. It doesn't. It's a lot more raw. It's a lot more honest than that. I'll say the next thing that I think people have a hard time with is some of the lack of relatability with the matchmaking and the dating scene in New York City. It does feel very, very of a different world, and unless you're maybe in that space directly, it's going to come across as, what is this thing? I also think Celine Song, the sort of opposites of Chris Evans and Pedro Pascal, are like very extreme. It's like a complete 180, two ends of the spectrum. And I know there's some people who would say it's like rich propaganda, poor man propaganda, right? And I think that is, no offense to anyone who said that or has that take, I think that's way too simple. I think sometimes when you're telling a story and you're making a movie, let's say, you kind of have to exaggerate certain things to help the audience understand what's going on. And while she keeps the characters nuanced and really doesn't place judgment on any of them, I think if she would have left their sort of places being way too gray, way too open for interpretation, I think the way the story plays out emotionally wouldn't have worked as well. Third thing I think that is causing this movie to be very all over the place with people is the pacing. I think the first half is paced in a certain way that's really, really good, and it sort of builds in a way. Then there is this pivot, and then the rest of the movie sort of changes its identity a little bit, and it does slow down a bit. And at an hour and 55 minutes, I do think it could feel a little long. I thought the movie was over a couple times. Now I'm very happy with where it ends up, but I did think the movie was building towards an end a couple times. Then another scene would happen, and I think that, I know for a fact, took a toll on some people, and I think that's valid. And the last thing, I think the biggest thing, and this is a spoiler, so I'm assuming if you're still watching this video, you've seen the movie. It is the storyline involving S.A. It is when Dakota Johnson finds out that one of her clients she set up with a man is assaulted. And that sort of plays out the rest of the movie. It's sort of used to make Dakota Johnson wake up and realize her job and the whole matchmaking thing is bullshit and not real and terrible, and that she is checking these boxes and she's not actually looking at the person as a human being or what they're capable of, not vetting, not, clearing these people in a certain way. When, she brings it up to her boss, they know it happens. They talk about how they just kind of hush, they lawyer up, they make it happen, and they move on, which I know a lot of people don't like, yet I will say this, and I don't. This criticism is extremely valid. I think all these flaws, I didn't say this at the beginning, are incredibly valid. If any one of these flaws hold back the movie for you, I get it 100%, and I'm not even going to argue it. I think for me, all of these, my mileage varies on all of them, and I think there's different value I put on different things in the filmmaking and storytelling. But I think what Celine Song might be trying to convey is like, that's how these things are handled in the real world, unfortunately. Like, Dakota Johnson's character wouldn't really have anything to do, and what the company does is kind of just deal with it in their own way and get rid of it. This movie is raw and honest. Well, that's a raw and honest look in how these things are handled in the world. And I know everyone sort of has a different relationship with something like SA, maybe you or people in your life or any sort of thing like that we all have our different relationships to it. And for some people, it hits a lot harder than others because it hits closer to home than others. And all of that is valid. And I'm not trying to dismiss any of that. I'm just saying I think the harsh reality is that is sort of what can happen. And I think that's what is in the subtext of the ending scene, where you find out Dakota Johnson's boss is leaving and going to a different office. What they're not telling you is she's definitely being moved to the other office due to the investigations. That's what these companies do. That's, if you go back to a movie like Spotlight, that's what they were doing with the priest being accused of child molestation. They would just move them somewhere else and sort of put it to rest. And I think the hope is that Dakota Johnson is going to take over and do a better job, or that's what the offer is, or she's still battling with the morality of it all. I know the scene where she goes to confront Zoe Winter's character, it seems like that's like a hero moment for Dakota and Chris Evans, and it solidifies them as being the good people in the story. I get that. I really do. And so I think all of that I'm not going to comment on further, because I think if you hate this and think she handled it terribly, I think that's fair. I just think that she was trying to show you that, like, it can be, unfortunately, it is dismissed like that. And there are maybe some people like Zoe Winter's character, who we also don't know how much time has passed at the end of the movie, are able to sort of move on from it in their own way. And I think it is a little too clean and a little too easy. And I think that is a big swing Celine Song took. I think she wanted to go as far with the modern dating thing as she could, because the movie talks about all these risks in dating, and this is the biggest risk of them all, is you go to meet someone and what if they do an unspeakable evil to you, right? So I think that's the point she was trying to make, and she either couldn't or didn't go too far into that to make that theme hit a little bit harder. I think she could have. I think that might have changed the movie in general, but I think that is a big reason. All those flaws I think are incredibly valid, but those are the four things I think that are really holding this movie back for people, and I wouldn't tell a single person that they're wrong. So that's just my sort of 2 cents on the matter, and I would love to hear in the comments if you agree with that, disagree with that, think I'm crazy, wrong, etc. But that's sort of my putting a bow on Materialists. I think the movie was very, very good, but I could understand if you did not like it, and even if you borderline hated it, because I think there is, what it's trying to show you is also very disgusting in terms of like matchmaking based on tangible things, because that's not love at the end of the day. So at the end of the day, choose love, and I can't wait to hang out with you all very, very soon.